lost everything through divorce and the lack of work in our jobs. The year before we became Christians, we decided to put new rugs around us. We started attending a church, we served at the church, and we learned about God. But by the second year, the new rugs that we had carefully placed around us were pulled out from under us. Scott became disabled after working 15 years as a truck driver mover. The place I had was falling under business. What would you say? Going out of business, thank you. Going out of business. There was hardly any work for me anymore. We began losing everything again. During the first year of this crisis, the church we've been going to had been praying for us nonstop. They'd also been helping us quite a bit. But as time went on, people wanted to start seeing some results of their prayer. You see, we were one of those families that never got better. At first, we would hear things like, God will make a way for you, or God will open the doors soon. But God wasn't making a way or opening any doors fast enough for this group of people. You just need to receive, Brother Scott. Well, Brother Scott was getting tired of hearing you just need to receive, Brother Scott. There was a point when it seemed like the more the church prayed for us, the more things got worse in our life. I was expecting our third child and found out that I had a high-risk pregnancy. So now I could hardly work at all. And Scott was filing workman's comp after waiting so long to do so. He had to. And when you do that, you can't work. While Scott was seeing all the doctors they had for him, we were supposed to be receiving these checks in the mail. However, the workmen's compensation people were in dispute with the state disability people, deciding who was to send Scott his check. And the result was no check for a long, long time. So long that we lost both our cars, and we had to move into a very small and older, much older motorhome that leaked. Some friends let us park in the back of their house and use their electricity. We would have to walk up a hill, it was their backyard, and walk up this hill to use water and to take showers, which was especially fun when I was pregnant. I was able to receive WIC and some food stamps, plus we would clean houses when we could, wash dishes at places, turn in cans and bottles, and do whatever odd jobs we could do until we got those checks in the mail. One day, I had my kids, and I had a little stroller for one of them, one of those umbrella strollers. And we were walking down an alley, looking at the dumpsters for bottles and cans. One of the pastors we knew in this community came driving up in his white Camaro. Hey, Teresa, how's things going? Well, you know, taking it day to day. Well, hang in there, talk to you later, bye. And he drove off. We didn't understand why it was so hard for us, but we still trusted God. We never missed church, even though we wanted to hide in shame. We still tithed, which meant many times our food money, because we wanted to be obedient in what we had learned in the church, and we believed that God would provide for us. It was a very hard time, and what made it even harder was hearing things like, brother, you must have a sin in your life because that's what's keeping God from blessing you guys. People started to act different towards us. They avoided us at the store. We would see a family come in and they would go down the other aisle. They avoided inviting us over to their house, not like they used to. Now they wouldn't have us all over. But they still brought care packages for us in food boxes. But now, as they dropped the food boxes off, there would be questions attached. I'll never forget the time this one couple that we were very good friends with came by to make a food box delivery. Now, they didn't come in and visit us anymore. They used to do that when we were in the house. But when we were in this motorhome, they never stopped by to visit. So they just dropped off the box, and I was about 5 months pregnant at that time, not 5 minutes. And Scott went out to see this couple, pick up the box, but when he came back inside, he was very upset. Guess what they asked me? What? They wanted to make sure we really needed this food box. Because they just had a homeless family come by the church. In fact, they were living in their car, and they needed the food, but they couldn't give it to them because we were on the list to give to. So they just wanted to make sure. I just bawled. I mean, we could not get out of the situation at that time in our life. We felt like such a burden to the church. We felt guilty. We felt judged. And what made things even worse was that the other people they were praying for were getting better. I mean, we would have praise reports every Sunday, but not us. There's the Adams, the unfixable people, you know. It just, we couldn't get better during that time. Every time we thought things were getting better in our life, the rug would be pulled out from under us another time. And everyone would caution us. Now, Scott, you can't get mad at God during this time. It's not God's fault. Don't get mad at God. You're not supposed to. That was taboo. But you know what? One morning, Scott had had enough. And he decided to have a long conversation with God. And when he was done, he came up to me and he said, you know, God spoke to me this morning. Do you know what he said? No. You're mad at me because you're counting on me. You're trusting me to get you through this time. And I will. Who are you counting on? As Christians, we're supposed to count on God. But when the rug keeps getting pulled out from under us, and God doesn't seem to be around when you need him the most, we tend to want to step onto another rug, don't we? It seems better over on this side. Ever finding yourself asking, why isn't God doing something now? I've been praying and praying. Or what about when a friend comes up and says, okay, now, is there something you haven't been telling me? Is there something you're doing? Are you sinning in some area? Because God must be punishing you right now for something. It's times like these when you just don't understand why you're going through the things you're going through right now, and why the rug is being pulled out from under you again and again. Your prayers start with doubt. You avoid people because you just don't want to talk about it anymore. You don't want to try and be fixed by another person. And all you're thinking about is, God, what am I doing wrong? I've been counting on you. As we begin our third week in Lent, we will realize that God is God. Today our images are rugs, and that's what those little things are supposed to be representing. Representing the things in our life that come and go. And when the rugs in our life get pulled out from under us, we will be tempted to put God to the test. And taunt God to prove who he is. This morning we are going to look at how God responded to... I can't talk today. This morning we are going to look at how Jesus responded to this. Same thing. In the second temptation, when he was encountered by the devil, and the more devoted you are as a disciple, the bigger this temptation is going to be for you. It's that temptation where you tell yourself, God just wouldn't let that happen to me. Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. If you are the Son of God, he said, throw yourself down. Now imagine looking down off the tallest building and the devil tells you that if you're the child of God, God will not allow you to be hurt because it is written in Scripture. The devil was tempting Jesus to prove who he was and to tempt God to prove who he was. He was referring to Luke 4:11. They, the angels, will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Now, it's the equivalent of, let's say, a 17-year-old getting busted for drunk driving, and he tells his friends, my old man's a lawyer. He's not going to let me get busted. The Father's the authority, but the Son forces the Father to be his servant on his greatness. And that's what Satan is trying to get Jesus to do. We fall into his temptation all the time. We try to get God to prove he is a good God. God is not a genie in the lamp. God is God. He won't do your bidding. He's God. You can't play him. You can't manipulate him. And you can't force his hand. But as Christians, we try to do this all the time. We think that, oh, God will never allow that to happen. Or, God is good. He's a good God all the time. Or God would never do that. But here's what happens when we do this. We think we're living by faith. But it has nothing to do with faith. Faith is not coming up with an idea and then asking God to bless it. That's hope. Now, hope is good, but you don't always get what you hope for, do you? Faith is responding to the promises God says that he is going to do. It's not coming up with something and asking God to bail you out. And that's exactly what this temptation was. The devil pressures Jesus. Don't you want their attention, Jesus? Don't you want to demonstrate who you are to all these people? I got an idea. I got a plan. Jump. And God will see you go, oh no, Jesus. And he'll rush to your rescue. He won't let anything happen to you. He's been planning this for thousands of years. He'll come to your rescue. You are God's son. How many times have we jumped? This isn't new. Satan uses this same stuff on us over and over again. Now let's look at what Jesus does. Jesus reaches back into a time of history when the nation of Israel came up against this very same temptation. Moses leads God's people out of Egypt into the desert, and God feeds them daily. One day they come to a place where there's no water. Here are 2 million thirsty people. The obvious question is, where are we going to get the water? Now they have 2 options. Option 1, we will trust God. Remember, God delivered us from Egypt. He killed half of Pharaoh's army. He feeds us every day, and God knows there's no water here. Or option 2, where's God? We need to remind God of what he's supposed to do. He's a God of mercy and grace. He should be taking better care of us. And they begin to tempt God by saying, why did you lead us to a place with no water? Aren't you the God of provision? You need to give us water now. How many times have we complained and tried to manipulate God to do something for us? Moses was faced with all these people, 2 million people, wanting to know why God wasn't responding. Why hasn't God answered our prayers, Moses? He's left us. You need to remind God that we're here and we're thirsty. And here's how Moses responds. So they quarreled with Moses and said, give us water to drink. Moses replied, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test? But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst? How can we trust God anymore? He's not dependable. We need to do something now. Sound familiar? But despite the taunting, God has mercy and compassion on his people and provides them with water. And despite our grumbling, God has mercy and compassion on us too. Verse 7. Moses named the place Massah, which means test, and Meribah, which means arguing, because the people of Israel argued with Moses and tested the Lord by saying, "Is the Lord here with us or not?" Now, the book of Exodus was written during the wandering of the wilderness. It was their history. And the book of Deuteronomy was written after the people arrived in the Promised Land. Deuteronomy is basically a speech that Moses gave to the people of Israel to remind them of God's faithfulness in their history. Here's a part of that speech relating to the water, the incident with the water. "Do not test the Lord your God as you did in the psalm." And his words are true for us today. Do not test God. Because we gather our rugs around us, and when they're pulled out, we can't understand why. Why would God allow such